Good morning. So we are going to start a new chapter, right? So we are going to talk about macroeconomics with a big picture. Essentially, so in this chapter, so I'm going to give you an overview what we're going to do for the rest of the semester. Okay. So here's the list of the topic we will discuss in this chapter. We start with understand the difference between macroeconomics and microeconomics. And then, so we are going to look at what is business cycle. Okay. This is going to follow by understanding long-run economic growth and the inflation, deflation. And then we also talk a little bit about open economy. Okay. All right. So that is the roadmap for this chapter. So usually we have two discussions. So one is to discuss and to guess what do you think, what is the current level of inflation and unemployment rate, right? So you may want to do all your own research by click the link I provide with you. But certainly before that, you can guess and see. So how far is your guess compared with the actual number, right? So that just gives you a sense what the actual economy looks like and how far are we in terms of understanding the macroeconomy. But if you get the number wrong, don't worry. So, but that's exactly what we are trying to study in this semester. All right. So now let's see what give us the origin of macroeconomics. Right. So in the introduction, I mentioned to you, macroeconomics started with the Great Depression in late 1920s, early 1930s. Right. So from your history class, you may know President Hoover, he was a president. Right. Back then, the microeconomics was well established. Okay, so micro. But we know very little about macro, or in other words, at that point of time, actually, so there's no field of macro at all. Okay, most of our idea or the theory to help us understand the aggregate economy largely coming from microeconomics. But then that becomes a disaster, particularly during the Great Depression. All right. Okay, so back then, the conventional wisdom regarding to the aggregate economy is so everything is going to sort out itself as a supply and demand equilibrium we discussed in previous chapter. Okay, and the government should pick a stand in terms of hands off, because eventually the market will sort out everything. Right? But this policy, it turns out, becomes a disaster to our economy. Right? The outcome, so we have this term, it's called Hooverville. So essentially, that is describe the failure of Hoover's policy, so that caused poverty across the United States. But certainly, so if we look backward, so we shouldn't blame too much on Hoover himself, because as I mentioned, the macroeconomics did not really exist back then, right? So we can't expect him to provide some useful policy guidance, right? All right, but certainly, so the experience of Great Depression inspired economists to think about the cause and the consequence of recession. Okay. Now, let's look at the difference between micro and macro. Okay. So on the left-hand side, so we have a list of typical micro questions. On the right-hand side, so I list some macro counterparts. Let's just pick a few as example for us to understand the difference between micro and macro. A typical micro questions: should I go to business school or take a job right now? Right? And then, so in terms of answer these questions, so that's going to involve opportunity cost. That's going to involve trade-off, involves marginal analysis. Right? On the right-hand side, a macro question will be how many people are employed in the economy as a whole this year. And then, so you can see here, so we are talking about the aggregate. Right? We are talking about the fraction of people who are employed or vice versa, unemployed. Right? Okay, the second example. What determines the salary offered by Citibank to Cherry, right? So who is a new MBA? Again, so here, so we talk about opportunity cost, talk about trade-off. But this opportunity cost, this trade-off is from the standpoint of view of the Citibank or the employer who is going to hire a new MBA. Right? On the right-hand side, so we have questions that are concerning about the macroeconomy. What determines the overall salary levels paid to workers in a given year? So this is not about a particular individuals. So this is about this society-wise, the average salary. Right? So you can see the flavor is quite different. Okay, and also I want to emphasize, so if we talk about the overall salary level, so it has implication, or the questions are more about income distribution, right? But on the left hand side, the questions are more about the individual decision, right? Okay, so one more examples. Next one, what determines the cost to a university or college of offering a new course? Again, so here, so we are using the concept like opportunity cost, trade-off, marginal analysis, right? And then on the right-hand side, a macro question will be what determines overall level of price in the economy as a whole. Okay, so here we are going to concerning about the price for a bundle of goods, not a particular one. Okay, so that's the difference between micro and macro questions. Now, I want to emphasize macro is not a simple summation of micro. Okay, so when we talk about supply and demand, okay, so in terms of aggregate supply and aggregate demand, yes, they are a summation of individual demand and individual supply. But in general, macro is not a simple summation of micro level. So here's an example. It's called paradox of thrifty. Okay. Just imagine if the economy is in a recession. Okay, so you may not know what is recession yet. So, but this is what we are going to study in the following few slides. But essentially, it just says the economy is in a hard time. Okay, and the people losing jobs, business lay off workers. Okay, so if we are in that situation, and then from the individual point of view, or you look at individual family and the business, so what is optimal or what is rational for them? So they must cut their spending, save. Okay, so why they want to do that and why that is optimal? This is because they must prepare for rainy day. They must save just in case they actually lose their job or lose their business. Right? But however, so if everyone do that, so that is going to translate into a disaster in the aggregate level. Why? Because everyone do that, and then so you're going to see a reduction in spending. So the reduction in spending is going to depress our economy even further. So, or in other words, make the hard time even worse. So you can see from the individual point of view, it is optimal to tighten your spending to save. But in the aggregate level, so that's going to make the problem even worse. Okay, so that is an example to show you macroeconomics is not a simple summation of micro. Okay. So to summarize, so before 1930, the conventional wisdom is self-regulating economy, meaning so all the problem will solved by invisible hands, or the market is going to work out everything. But then, so after the Great Depression, and the economists realize two things. Number one, yes, the economy can self-regulate itself, but this self-regulating process or the self-correcting process can be lengthy and painful. So that comes up with Keynesian economics. Okay, so this Keynesian economics provide some prescription regarding to what the government can do to help us walk through this painful time. This is number one. And additionally, so we also realize, so there are frictions, there are imperfections in our economy. In a sense, market may not be the ultimate solution, but those are beyond the discussion of this class. For this class, we will focus on Keynesian view in terms of economics. In a sense, so the government can help us to shorten the period of a hard time to mitigate the downside of the economy. Okay, and then so we are going to abstract away from the frictions. So for example, externality, you may heard about from your microeconomic class. Okay, so just give you a comparison. Okay, so this pre-Great Depression and post-Great Depression. So we look at two very severe economic downtime. On the bottom, this purple line, that's for Great Depression. On top, that is, then the top is here. Oh, sorry, so my pen still is not charged. So yeah, so the red one is a refers to great financial crisis in 2008. The bottom one, so that is 1929 Great Depression. What we are plotting here is the world industry output following the onset of these two very severe recession. And you can see so clearly, so the Great Depression takes almost 10 years for the economy to recover. And in the worst day, so the economy, the output decreased by over 40%. As a comparison, in 2008, the Great Depression, so the recovery was much quicker. And then the downturn is much milder, it's 10%. Okay, and then what behind the difference? The difference is our understanding and the policy we come up. Right. To summarize this part, so let's just show you this famous quote. So the key things here is, Keynesian said, the long run is a misleading guide to current affairs. In the long run, we are all dead. But literally, what do you mean in the long run, we are all dead? Is that, so if we leave the market to self-correct itself, so this is going to be a this is going to be a lengthy and a painful process. Okay, so we may not able to, or we may not able to afford to wait for the adjustment process to finish. Okay, it's better to let the government to jump in to help the economy to recover. So that is the main point. So that just summarize the origin of macroeconomics. Okay. So now we go to the Second topic we are going to overview in this chapter, business cycle. Since 1930, the US, and including most national governments, they have used tools to improve the economy. But summarize, the tool they can use includes monetary policy and fiscal policy. Okay. And what is monetary policy? Those are policies that use the change in quantity of money to affect interest rate and affect overall spending. So the key word here is spending. So the government do something to affect the spending. And so by changing spending, so that's going to help the economy, right? The alternative is fiscal policy. And fiscal policy, the government is going to use changes in government spending and taxes to affect overall spending. Again, what the government can do is affect spending. Okay, just keep that in mind. So we will explain to you later why spending is what they can affect, or why they focus on changing spending. Right. All right. And then, so here are a few images of depression that just highlight the severeness of recession, and also inspire us to understand the cause and the consequence, and furthermore, what the government can do to dealing with recession. Now here, so I just show you the data to help you to understand the recession or the economic downturn. Right. So what we have here, so we have data from 1985 to 2014. Okay. On the left-hand side, we look at private sector employment and industrial production index. Okay, so the red one is industrial production index. Essentially, just tells us so how much we can produce. Okay, and then the purple line is the private sector employment. Okay, so the higher the number, and then so the more jobs we have created, or more people we employed. Right. On the right hand side, so we look at the same two data series, but we just look at the percentage change compared to previous year. Okay. Now let's just focus on the left one. So if by looking at the left one, let's just start with industrial production index, the red one. So you can see this number fluctuate, right? Sometimes decline, but sometimes increase. Okay, and here we highlight 3 time periods. First is close around 1991. The second is around 2002. The third is 2008. Okay, so that's represented by these 3 shaded area. Okay. The 3 shaded area. Okay. And you can see, so during this 3 time period, both industrial production and private sector employment decline. Okay. So this decline actually refers to the recession. Okay. And on the right hand side, so if you look at the percentage change, you can see more clearly. So during this 3 time period, so both indicators decline, right? And particularly if you look at 2009, so you can see the industrial production index declined by over 10%, and then the employment declined by 6%, right? So you can see during those time period, our economic growth has been interrupted. Okay. Now, so we are going to define the business cycle. Okay. So recession, sometimes we also call it contraction. Those are periods of economic downturns, meaning when output and employment are falling. Okay. On the other hand, so we say the economy is experiencing expansion. And then expansions are periods of economic upturn when output and employment are rising. And what is business cycle? Business cycle refers to the short run alternation between recession and expansion. Now let's go back to the previous data point, right? So what is recession? Recession essentially refers to a time period like 2009, when output and employment decline. What expansion? Expansion is time period after 2009, like starting from 2010. You can see both employment and production went up, right? And then, so what is business cycle? Business cycle refers to the alternation between recession and expansion. Or alternatively, you can say, so business cycle is a fluctuation of our economy. Okay, so that just summarized by here: recession, expansion, and business cycle. Okay, and then we can use this stylized figure to understand business cycle. Right. First of all, we have recession. Right. So essentially, that's a time period when the economic activity goes down. And then so you have expansion. So which means so the economy starts to pick up. And then this is going to follow by another recession. Okay, and so on and so forth. So this entire fluctuation is called business cycle. But interestingly, so we have 2 points you may want to pay attention. One is called peak, the other is called trough. What is the peak? So peak is the top of your expansion. Once we reach the peak, then the economy is going to expect to start to decline. On the other hand, toward the end of the recession, and then we are reaching the trough, and then we see the light at the end of the tunnel, and then we start to expand, right? So overall, so the business cycle, it just refers to the fluctuation of our economy, right? So let's just take a few minutes break and then we coming back.